ようこそ私の授業へ. I'm Madame Sensei. I continue aligning the Duolingo course with my in-person classes and filling in all the gaps that Duolingo doesn't discuss. Now, I am modeling great behavior for you because if I can learn how to use YouTube, surely you can learn Japanese. Now, today I'm going to break the lesson into 3 different sections because I don't want any section getting really long. It's better for your brain if you take little breaks in between things, so I'm going to try to keep each section under 10 minutes. But we're going to look at, as usual, we're going to look at any particles the skill has, and this skill has a lot of particles. So we're going to play with them. I'm going to show you how each of them works. I'm going to show you any kanji. This skill has a lot of kanji. Grammar, we're finally getting into interesting grammar bits. And we're going to look at all the sentences that you could possibly come across in this Duolingo skill. Okay, and of course, we got a lot of culture to talk about this time too. So we have a lot to dive into. Let's get going. We are on Intro 2. Working our way down the tree. We're almost at the first castle checkpoint. All right, so here's the tips. The first particle, we've already seen it, but now we get to describe it more in detail. This is wa. Wa is a topic marker. Sometimes I will call it a subject marker, even though technically this is a topic marker and nga is the subject marker. But for the most part, they're interchangeable. I'll show you when wa will be more important than nga. But we've already seen it in watashi wa pizza ga suki desu. Tanaka-san wa genki desu. We've already seen a lot of it. So basically, whenever you see wa, the thing that comes right in front of it is the subject. And now you'll notice that this is actually hiragana ha. The long story short is that it wasn't always pronounced ha. At one point, it was closer to a W sound. And now when we're using it to mean, hey, whatever comes right in front of me is the subject, it's going to revert back to its ancient pronunciation. All right, there's only 2 hiragana that this happens to. Everything else, you get what you see. Everything else is pretty well set in stone with how it's pronounced. But this, when it means the subject is right in front of me, it's always going to be pronounced wa, but spelled ha. When you're typing on your keyboard, you're going to have to type in ha, or you're going to accidentally come up with the wrong wa. The next particle is the question mark. The question mark comes at the end of a sentence. It's ka. Ka. And you'll notice there's no reason to write a question mark because this means question mark. So we're just going to put it at the end of a sentence and it means question. If you see it in the middle of a sentence, it means or. So this is kind of like, are you an American? Or you can think of it that way if you'd like. It's just a question mark. Amerika jin desu ka? Amerika jin desu. Gakusei desu ka? And I'd normally say gakusei-san desu ka. I'd put a san in there just to make it more polite. Hai, gakusei desu. And again, that u on the end of desu, that's a voiceless vowel. Don't pronounce that u. Pronouns. We really need to talk about pronouns. All right, there is this linguistic theory that you as non-native Japanese speakers, golly, Japanese is too difficult. You're going to have to use all the pronouns. No, I want to just debunk that right now. I know that you can understand this. I know you can wrap your head around it. Let's tackle it right now so that you don't get into any embarrassing situations, okay? Watashi. Watashi is your safe I pronoun, okay? This is me, this is I. This is anytime you're going to have it the subject or the direct object or the indirect object, it's going to be watashi, okay? That's your safe, I don't know what else to do, use that, okay? If you're a guy, you can say boku. You can say boku. Normally, though, to be polite, you're going to wind up saying watashi. Go ahead and start with watashi, and then when you're in a more casual situation, use boku, okay? To make it plural, now remember there are no plurals in Japanese, okay? You can have a kimono, or you can have a bunch of kimono. There's no plural. There's a ninja, or there's a bunch of ninja. You're not going to add an S to it. But sometimes, for people especially, we're going to want to say, hey, there's more than just me here. So we'll add this tachi. tachi, watashi tachi. All right, that means I, etc. I, et al. You might have heard kodomo for child and kodomo tachi. Okay, that's another way to make a plural. I mean, it's the same tachi. This is very erudite sounding. This is closer to the original Chinese. In Chinese, this means I. And it's pronounced wo in Chinese, but in Japanese, it's pronounced ware. This here, this is like a quote, like a ditto mark. That's the word I'm looking for in English. Ditto mark. This means repeat whatever kanji was just there. So if you see this, this means ware ware. Ware just by itself sounds like an old-fashioned way to say I. Ware ware is us. But it sounds like you're being a little hoity-toity. You can use it, that's fine, but it's a little old-fashioned sounding. Okay, so let's talk about all the possibilities you have. We've just seen watashi, and we've seen boku. Okay, if you're a girl and you're talking to a bunch of other girls, and you're being really slangy, you can drop the w from watashi, and you can just go atashi. You'll see this a lot in manga. You, as a foreigner, though, learning Japanese, don't mess around until you get super good. Okay, at this stage, you should be using watashi, maybe boku. If you use atashi now, you're going to kind of get sideways looks like, what are you trying to pull here? Are you just mispronouncing? Whatever. Stick with watashi until you get really good, but you are going to see atashi in print. You are going to hear it in TV shows, okay? Like I said with ware ware, that's really old-fashioned. You might see or hear waga. Okay, this is also really, really old-fashioned. All right, so tachi, as I was explaining, is your plural marker. Watashi tachi, boku tachi. Let's talk about ore. I was going to wait, but let's go ahead and talk about ore. Ore you're going to see in print a lot, in like really, really macho characters. You're going to hear it in TV shows. Oh my God, please don't use this for reals. Okay, this is just like literary, like you have a character that you want to show immediately is macho. You have a character who is really full of himself. He's going to say, kono ore-sama, this great I. Okay, you dare use it. Stick with watashi, stick with boku. And I should also add the other one you're going to hear, which I didn't add yet, is if you say ore wa really fast, you might hear somebody say oira, oira, and usually written in katakana right here. Here's the katakana, okay? So those are things you're gonna hear and see when you're watching TV shows or reading manga, okay? And so you'll also see the plural of it, okay? Ore tachi. Right here. Jon-san tachi. John and the others. Okay, so I always tell my students, you know, you're watching Scooby-Doo and they're like walking down the hall, Scooby, Shaggy, Fred. They go through all the names, okay? In Japanese, you're not going to do that. You're going to choose one name and add a tachi on the end, okay? Ware ware is a plural. Wareda is the same plural, okay? You can say ware ware, you can say wareda. You're going to hear that. Oh, I wrote oreda, turns into oida. It's actually ore wa. Then it sometimes turns into oreda, and then it turns into oida. I did write it. See, I was smart, and I predicted that you'd ask about it. All right, now, the next thing Duolingo says is they talk about anata. All right, let me explain anata. Anata is super, super close. Please don't use it, okay? It's awkward to use it. What you're going to do instead, you want to call someone you. You're going to call them by their name. Whoa, okay, I don't know their name yet. I'm going to show you sneaky ways to find out their name. I'm going to show you sneaky ways to ask them their name that does not use the word anata, okay? Call them by their occupation. Call them by what they're wearing. Call them by what their age. Call them anything at all. Stick a san on the end and you'll be fine, okay? Kimi is a less formal anata. It used to mean Lord. We're going to talk about this in a second. Okay, less formal. This is mostly used by guys calling their girlfriends or husbands calling their wives. Okay, and then the one I want to talk to you about is the one I think you probably already picked up. That is going to get you in so much trouble if you use it in real life. Okay, so this is the problem with Anata. It's too close. It feels really in your face, and so it's going to make your stomach clench when somebody calls you Anata, unless they're your boyfriend. Seriously. So let me explain how this works. So even in English, we have times when we use a word and then gradually over the years it starts degrading and degrading and degrading and degrading until it changes its meaning completely. And that's what happened in Japanese. And they've been struggling with how to talk to someone for centuries upon centuries upon centuries. If you ever read anything from 1,000 years ago, and isn't it cool that there is literature from 1,000 years ago? Because this is such a literate society and people wrote things down. When they speak to the emperor in the tale of Genji, when they speak to the emperor in anything else you read that's really old, they're going to call him, "Oh, great one before me." Here's that honorific "oh," and it means you're softening this thing. Mae means in front of. We've seen it in namae, the name in front, okay? "Oh mae, oh great one before me." But eventually the years went by, hundreds of years went by, and maybe your daimyo was a pretty good guy, and you wanted to say, "Oh, my daimyo, you're such a great person. Oh, great one before me." Okay, and then another couple hundred years go by, and you want to say, "Oh, my boss at work, he's a really great guy. I'm going to call him omae." And then another 100 years go by, and you're calling your husband omae, and then eventually the husband's calling the wife omae, and now you can call your kids omae, but chances are you're going to save omae for your dog or your cat. Okay, it's degraded that much. That eventually got replaced with kimi. Kimi means Lord, but nowadays, like I was saying, kimi is usually a guy talking to his girlfriend, okay, or husband talking to his wife. Parents talking to their children, we use kimi a lot. Baby teachers talking to their students, okay. For a while, they tried onushi. Onushi. Nowadays, if you hear somebody say that, that's really old-fashioned sounding. In the 60s, they tried to move it to sochira. Sochira, that one over there. So you're talking to someone, you're looking in their eyes, and you're saying, "Oh, that one over there?" That didn't stick for very long. And eventually, also in the 60s, they tried otaku, your house. Okay? There's the honorific o, and then there's taku, which means house. Now, what happened with this one? Just like certain slang words come along and you're like, "Oh, radical dude," and it's really popular for a few years and then suddenly nobody's using it anymore. Okay, I don't know how many people are saying yeet anymore. So people were using this for maybe 5 years and then they stopped using it. And the police came to arrest someone who was a serial killer. And it's really gruesome and I don't want to get into the details. And there were a couple things that the newspapers picked up on the serial killer. One is he lived in his mother's basement and he didn't get out. And two is he had an extensive collection of pornographic manga. 3, he didn't realize, because he didn't really talk to anybody, that nobody was using the phrase otaku anymore. It had come and gone. And so as the police were interviewing him, he kept calling them otaku. And so this got put on him. The newspapers dubbed him otaku. So by golly, I beg you, I beg you, I beg you, don't say, "I'm an otaku. I like manga." Oh my God, it doesn't mean that. And back in the day, you know, I used to be a professional translator. And there was a certain magazine starting up in America. And I was like, "Oh, please don't call your magazine that." And they decided to call their magazine that anyway. No. Don't use that phrase at all, okay? It has a creepy connotation of you're a stalker fan. It's not a word you want to use, okay? All right. Next thing Duolingo says is it gives you the words for he and she. Oh, please don't use these either. Okay. So the problem is that the second you say kanojo, it implies your girlfriend. Kare. Kare is just, these are just too direct. Okay, just like anata is too direct, these are too direct. So instead, please say ano hito, literally that person. And remember, hito, don't open your mouth all the way. Hito, ano hito. Or you can say ano kata. Ano kata is more polite. Kata is a more polite way to say hito. It's a different kanji. I'll show you that one next time. So please, instead of using kare or kanojo, use ano hito. And yes, I have inputted all of those into the Duolingo database, so you can type ano hito, ano kata, and be fine. If you're using the tiles, you'll have to choose between kare and kanojo. But just, you know, you're smart enough. You can get around. You don't have to use these. There's other ways to describe people. Okay? So I want to keep these videos very short. And I'm already at 15 minutes. Oh my golly. We had so much culture to talk about this time. And we talked about particles. And next time I'm going to talk about the kanji for this skill. And we've got a lot of kanji to talk about. And then we'll talk about, we'll make a third video and we'll talk about the sentences. So this one is going to be 3 different parts. Thank you for coming along on the ride with me as I learn to use YouTube. And soon you will know more Japanese than I know of YouTube. See you next time. Mata ne.